Welcome to a new Inner Growth Lounge. Today I'm super excited because I have this amazing lady, Veronica Winton, with me. She's a certified integrative health coach, rapid transformation therapy practitioner, hypnotherapist, published writer. She's the founder of Revival Health, a practice that shares her life lessons and guides others to healthier, happier relationships and better health. She has been featured on well-known platforms and publications, and she's a speaker at international events. She's obsessed with well-being, empowerment, and alignment with one's truth, and her heart melts like butter every time she just looks at her dog, and I feel you.
So true.
Welcome, Veronica.
Thank you for having me.
It's such a pleasure to have you here. And today we're talking about how to attract healthier relationships. But I would like to ask you, how did you make this connection? Because you are a health coach and you have a lot of background in health coaching. So how does it come to, bond with relationships? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. This all stems from my own life experience. I've been very health conscious actually throughout my life because I had a very ill mother from a very young age. But I've also gone through phases in my life where I've lost my health and I didn't really understand why. And as I started to, if I go back, I actually hit rock bottom in life about 4 years ago. And at that point, my health was really at an all-time low. And it was more frustrating to me, I think, than usual, I guess, because I had grown up with such an ill mother. And so I knew the importance of health and the toll it takes, not just on one personally, but on everyone around you. And so I was extra frustrated in this position of like, why am I here? And I was really at an all-time low. And it wasn't until I started doing the inner work and unpacking my own life, so to speak, over the course of, the past 4 or 5 years, that I came to fully understand the connection between emotional well-being and physical well-being, the mind-body connection. Mm-hmm. And this is so real. And the more I dug into this subject, the more it became clear that, our emotional health is so interlinked with our physical health, and our emotional health is so linked to relationships. And as I look back, again, of course, I wasn't aware of it at the time, at least not what was really happening. I knew I was unhappy and I was becoming unwell, but I didn't really understand what was going on. And as I look back, I realize how unhealthy and how toxic, quite frankly, the relationships were that I had. And yes, the romantic relationships, because those tend to have the biggest effect on us because of the proximity. We spend the most time with those people. But also within my family and friendships, etc. And in the workplace. So, relationships are not just love relationships. They're everything. They're everywhere. And that's really how the connection came about, because of my own experience and how I began to understand and really study how interlinked it all was.
So how is it interlinked? Like, for example, how does self-care, let's say, and our emotions affect our relationships? Give us some kind of example.
I would almost turn that around and sort of pose or have you look at it in a slightly different way, in that, to ask the question, are you happy in your relationships and in life generally? And if the answer is, I'm not really happy, then very often the symptom or the side effect of that is poor health. So chronic conditions throughout the world are increasing. The statistics are actually incredible on this. And so a chronic illness is essentially something consistent. So it's not like you break your leg and then it gets better at some time. It's something that's permanent, essentially, and gets worse over time. And this is what I experienced in my life. So I was in these relationships that I wasn't really happy, but I was so committed to them and really trying to make them work and trying to fix everything. And because I believed I was doing the right thing and I was a good person and I wanted to be happy so desperately, and yet my health was declining. And so it was really unpacking that and understanding that the self-care part almost comes after. It's understanding why are things the way they are. And in almost all cases, it's a form of codependence within the relationships. So, and physically, this comes out in forms of addiction as well. So whether that's alcohol or drugs or cigarettes or sugar or food or, they're all forms of addictions. And codependency is also an addiction. And addictions ultimately stem from this deep-seated feeling that, quite frankly, almost pretty much everyone on the planet carries to a certain extent, of feeling like we're not enough. Because when we feel like we're not enough, we need more from something or someone else. Again, whether that's alcohol, cigarettes, or drugs. But of course, all of this happens on a subconscious level. And this is where the hypnotherapy is very interesting and comes in quite handy, because it allows us to tap our subconscious and really start to dig into the person to understand the root of those feelings. Because underlying, when we're not happy, we tend to make decisions out of fear. Again, subconsciously, most of the time, we think we're making logical, rational decisions because we want something. But very often it stems from this deep-seated fear. And it's the fear of being alone, the fear of abandonment, the fear of rejection. And these are all very common, very normal sort of deep-seated beliefs, but they're also sort of the foundation of codependency, because it means we're looking for something or someone else to validate us. Again, coming back to the addictions, right? Alcohol, drugs, we're looking for food, for comfort in food, right? We're looking for validation from another person. We're looking to feel good from drugs or alcohol. We're looking to ease our pain through nicotine. We're looking, you see how it's all, it's something else that we need, right? But we don't, but we believe we need to feed us. And so breaking this codependent and these fears of abandonment and fear of rejection and fear of being alone, finding the root cause of that, in my experience, I found is the key element to coming home to our sovereignty, and to a point where we can truly self-care. Now, this whole process is a part of self-care, but I always say you can't heal in the same environment that made you sick. So if you're in a very toxic relationship or struggling from any kind of addiction, then, you can take all the bubble baths in the world and, you can eat as well as you want and you can do all those wonderful things. But your situation, it's always going to be a very short-term, temporary fix. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a severed limb. Sorry for the gross analogy, but but it's this is why I believe in this holistic approach into health and healthy relationships. It was a very long-winded answer, but I hope it answered your question.
No, it was great. No, I'm thinking now, because I started from parenting. So I have been doing parenting since 2008. And it's unbelievable, as parents, how many things we give to our children to afterwards need to shed off in order to be, free to find themselves. And how many parents are unconscious in what this responsibility is. Okay, so something else that I have noticed is that when you feel better with yourself, like when you start meeting your true self, and it's like what you're saying, coming in terms with your own true self, then somehow you really want to give it the best. So your nutrition changes. You don't want to do the habits that are not good for you. Like I used to smoke many years ago, but when I started, finding my way, I started not needing it. I couldn't understand at the time that it was that, but it wasn't interesting anymore, because before it was giving me something that I didn't need afterwards to have. And it's actually very, very important what you're saying. And when you look in your relationship, as you say, in your relationships, you understand where you are at as far as your own connection with your own self is concerned, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Our external relationships will always be a reflection of our internal relationships. And again, I know this is sort of off from the norm, but everything in life is a relationship. It's a relationship. We have a relationship with food. We have a relationship with things. We have, it's all a form of relationship. And like I say, a codependency. And so it's amazing what you said, and sort of proves the point of when you started to do the inner work and know yourself and begin to feel like you were enough, you no longer required the external, in your case, smoking, cigarettes, the nicotine to make you feel better. It just all of a sudden became uninteresting because you didn't need it anymore. And this is the perfect example of that connection.
Yeah. Smoking, food, like I was also doing a lot of emotional eating. And, in time, I see that like before I was thinking I need to go on a diet, meaning I need to look great for other people. You know what I mean? So afterwards, it started being like something like, oh my God, I have tortured my body so much through all these years. I'm so sorry for this. And I need to make up for it because I love you. I want you to be well. So it's a lot of, it's so much different approach from one side to the other. But when you're there, you don't understand it, right? So you think it's the relationship. You think it's your 5 kilos that you have more that is not getting you where you want to go.
Yeah. It's but that's a telltale sign. And I lived this, I did it. When we look to blame others or our environment or our circumstances or other people, and like in a bad relationship, it's like, well, they have to change because their behavior is wrong. And this is, there are two things actually. One, for better or for worse, we cannot change other people. The only power we have in life is to change ourselves. And that's just the truth. As much as we'd like to think we can, change others, we can't. Every person on the planet has to make that choice themselves. The only power we actually have is to change ourselves. And so if we want something different, we have to change. And that doesn't mean that the other person or the other thing is right, or his behavior is acceptable or excusable, or it doesn't mean any of that. It's just, if we want something different, we have to change. And that's the hard part. What that means is taking responsibility. And that's a dirty word, right? It's like, well, I'm responsible. I take care of 5 kids and have 3 jobs. I'm responsible. But are you really taking responsibility for your life? Because these excuses of, oh, I have to stay in the unhealthy relationship because of the children, or because of, and I'm not saying it's easy, right? But we always have a choice. It may be a terrible choice. We may not like it, but there is always a choice. And these things are often excuses because we're not willing or ready to face the real issues, which are internally. Because when we can focus on something or someone else, like children or jobs, or that's why people bury themselves in work and get burnout, they're running from something. Because by focusing on that, you don't have to, or you choose not to, you avoid looking inside. Exactly. And that responsibility comes back to being willing and able to look inside. Because if you take the word apart, responsibility just means an ability to respond. And that's empowering, right? So when we truly take responsibility for our lives and happiness, it essentially just means, we are responsible and not someone else. And it allows us, through doing the work, allows us to respond to situations as opposed to react to them, and thereby shift our lives.
Yeah. So how do we let go of something that doesn't serve us? How do we come to that point that we are more free of that, package, let's say?
Yeah. I would say, in my experience, there are a few steps. And the first one is to take responsibility. So to be willing and able to look inside and start to do that inner work, because we have to unpack it. Time doesn't heal, time conceals, and wounds are not lost, they're embodied. So and there's no magic pill for it, right? Nobody you pay, no therapy you go to, no pill you take is going to do that work for you. It's just, it takes time and effort and energy, and that is a step that needs to happen. But in order to let go, we need to understand it. So this is part of the inner work. And again, this is sort of where hypnotherapy can help a lot, because we need to find the roots cause of these issues. How, why, when, and where did these deep-seated beliefs come to be within us? And so once we can identify that, then we can begin to release it and to let it go. But before we understand where it comes from, it's always going to be putting a Band-Aid on a bigger wound again, and the issue will likely resurface. So that's step 2. And then sort of step 3 in letting go and changing your future is really, it means changing our thoughts and changing our beliefs and changing our behaviors. And in order to do that, we need to be brave enough to venture into the unknown. And this taps into, we were talking a little bit about this before we started the podcast, because if we can predict the future, by nature, we are living in the past, because any prediction is based on past events and past feelings and past emotions. And so if we wake up in the morning and think all the same thoughts and feel all the same feelings and worry about all the same things that we did the day before, our day today it has to be the same as yesterday, because we're doing all the same things. So to go to a different future, we have to think new thoughts and have new beliefs and new behaviors. And that means venturing into the unknown, because only the unknown is unpredictable, which means it's able to, or it will be something new, which is what we want, right?
It's about being, being welcoming to that. I think that's one of the greatest steps, to allow the unknown to come in, because we are programmed in such a way that we want control. It's like, if I have control, I'm safe, so I know what's following, which is what you're saying. What's following, if you know what it is, it means that it's the same as your past.
Exactly.
And then you're just doing the same thing over and over again. You're just blaming people in the end, and everything else, life and stuff. Would you say that somebody can do this transition by themselves?
Never say never to anything.
Yeah.
But I do believe it's very difficult. I think, humans, we need connection to survive, right? We're not meant to walk this earth alone. We need relationships. The quality of our relationships, in my opinion, determine the quality of our lives. And that's part of this journey. And for me, it was a very lonely journey. I didn't have a roadmap. I didn't have people around me. Pretty much everyone I knew didn't understand what was going on or what I was trying to do. And as part of this self-evolution process, I moved away from people, and some people that I'd known for a long time, because it was just no longer aligned. I realized how different my values were, and I'm trying to change my energy frequency. I talk a lot about energy and frequencies as well in my writing. And in order to do that, there's this common saying of, you become the product of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And that number varies, but the theory remains, and I believe is very valid. Sort of, if we surround ourselves with people who, never exercise and eat junk food every day, our chances increase by, I think it's like 80-90% of becoming that way as well. But if we surround ourselves with people who are outdoors and athletic and eat well and have thriving businesses and wonderful relationships, then by nature, like, we level up. We take on that. And so who we surround ourselves with, I think, is a big part of our own health and happiness and success in life. And so to answer your question, can you do it alone? Well, you can do a lot on your own, but I don't think you can do everything on your own. And I think a support network, whichever form that takes, whether it's a coach, whether it's therapy, whether it's, I mean, there are endless ways you can work on yourself. But I don't think you can do it all on your own.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking you is because, many times we will come to this conversation. I personally believe that you cannot. I know, never say never, but personally, I believe that our mind is structured in such a way that sometimes if you don't have the support in that moment, when it's like it's like a glimpse and you're about to grasp it and then somehow it's gone. But if somebody's not there to, it happens many times in my aha moments I had with various young coaches and psychotherapists, and because I like to try all these personal development things, I noticed that my mind is like it's slipping. It's like, I am about to understand it and then it's gone. So when they mention it, for example, in a session, like, yes, why was this sleeping all this time? Because my mind was keep doing the same thing. So I do believe that we can do a lot of things by ourselves, but I think those deeper parts that are very painful for us to face, sometimes you need the network around you that understands you, but also somebody who knows how to get you there, how
Someone
to help you.
And this is where coaches, I think coaches more than therapists in this particular regard come in as like cheerleaders, right? Because we have setbacks, right? It's not a clean journey upwards, right? I mean, honestly, it's like this. You're going to go up and down, and that's just the reality of it. There's no sugarcoating it. And when we have downs and when we fall back and when we ask ourselves, oh my God, like, is it ever going to get better? And when and how, and is it all worth it? And what's the point? And all these questions that we've all asked ourselves, right, 1,000 times probably. It's in those moments where, a therapist will, for at least in my journey, a therapist was really, really valuable at the beginning, where I just needed to let stuff out, sort of just to talk, right? And they listen. But then at some point, I'm like, okay, now I need more like interaction. I actually need someone to work with me as opposed to just to listen to me. And in order to progress. And I think this is where coaches can come in, because they can not only hold space, but they can really work with you and be your cheerleader and be like, you've got this. And we just need that in life. And
I just got, in our romantic relationships as well, what you were saying about the people around you, and if you're with people that are more inspiring, you will be inspired. I was talking with this lady and she was telling me about her ideal man that she's looking for, okay? It's this tribe, and he was so wonderful, this man, like she described it, okay? And I said, okay, so let's reverse it a little bit. I mean, why would this man would want to be with you? I mean, do you feel like you are aligned with what do you do in your days? So, look, I'm going to work. I'm at home watching Netflix. Sometimes I will go with my friends for a coffee. And I was like, okay, so why would you think that he would be interested in this? Like, if he's so active as you are describing him, and so successful and so outgoing, what do you think would attract him to be in this space? And she couldn't answer it because she couldn't understand that she should move a little bit in order to be aligned with such a man. So the same, I mean, it's with our friends as well. If I'm sitting and I'm crying over all my struggle in my relationship, and they are all, giving me tissues and saying, yes, you're right, and they're so bad, I'm not going to get out of there. I'm just going to stay there and repeat it, right?
Yeah.
So in moving forward to your future, what do you need so you will not repeat the past again? I mean, okay, the network is one thing that
it's an ability to let go, right? But I think and it requires a clear intention and a elevated emotion. And Dr. Joe Dispenza actually talks a lot about this. I love his work, and I'm practicing a lot of it myself. And that you need to know your why and your what. So what do you want and why do you want it, right? So in the case of this lady that you were describing, she knows what she wants, but it sounds like she didn't really know the why, right? Because when you asked her, well, what would attract him, and like how would, when you took it back to her, she couldn't really answer it. And that's important. It's the why. We need to know that, because what do we want and why do we want? Why we want something is because why do we want anything? Because of how it's going to make us feel, right? Whether that's true or not. Like, when I get the perfect man, I will feel loved and fulfilled and blah, 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 right? If I get the perfect job, I will feel valid and blah, 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 right? It's sort of, but that's living in what, again, Dr. Joe Dispenza refers to as the Newtonian model. It's cause and effect, right? Something in our external environment creates emotions or brings up emotions in us. But it's making this shift to go to a different future, to have something different. We need to shift from that model of cause and effect to what he refers to as the quantum model of reality, which is causing an effect. So we're not waiting for the external thing to happen before we start living like it already has. And that means new thoughts, new beliefs, and new behaviors. So coming back to letting go, which we talked about before, and venturing into the unknown. So we need to feel, again, if we use this example, she needs to feel as if she already has her, her perfect man. And but not just in a moment, permanently, always. She has to live. It's about living in that. So feeling that. And when we feel that, our belief changes and our behavior changes, because when we feel everything we want to feel already, there's no lack. And so there's no worry. There's nothing to worry about because we already have it. And that changes our beliefs and our behaviors, which changes our frequency. And when we elevate our vibration and our frequency that we emit, this is when physics applies and the law of attraction, then by definition, it must come. But that's, in theory, it's so simple, but in practice, therein lies the challenge, because it's truly, truly feeling and believing it all the time, not just within a meditation or within a moment where you're thinking about it. It's living in the reality, or living as if you already have the reality that you want. And then, sooner or later, it must come. And this comes back to, we are in charge of the what and the why. But then the universe, source, whatever you believe, whatever you think, whatever you want to call it, is responsible for the how and the when. And therein lies the challenge, because there's no timeline. We can't say, well, I'll feel like this, and then in a week, he's going to ring my doorbell. It's like, no, the challenge is to, if in a week he doesn't, to keep feeling it and keep believing it and keep that behavior, because we're not in charge of the how and the when. Does that make sense? I can't hear you. There's something with the sound. Good.
Okay, so it goes back to what you were saying before, though, because if you're not feeling that you're worthy of having that man, money, whatever, friendships, travel, if you're not worthy of it, so if you don't tap into what is keeping you back, it's very difficult to feel that constantly. Like it's because I know that many people are pushing themselves to feel good, but you cannot feel aligned with something that there is a wound that you haven't healed, right?
And that's why that's come back to step 1 and step 2, right? The responsibility of unpacking it.
Yeah. Amazing. Love it. Well, how can people get in contact with you?
My website is www.revivalhealth.ch because I'm based in Switzerland. And my Instagram is Revival Health LLC. And so on those 2 sources, you'll find everything that about me. I, like you mentioned at the beginning, I write a lot and I write on medium.com. So if you're a reader or writer as well and familiar with that platform, then you can just look up Veronica Whedon on medium.com and find a lot of my work there.
Great. Veronica, thank you so much for being here and for enlightening us.
Thank you so much.
We look forward also to the summit, the Women Thrive Summit, where we will be co-speaking there.
Absolutely. I'm excited for that too.
Yes. Thank you very, very much for being here, and we shall talk again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
My great pleasure.